Hey guys, welcome to the Electron Academy. My name is Hussein and I'm going to be your instructor for this Python series. So today we're going to be doing a very important part of programming in general, and that's lists. So we're going to be discovering what they are, how to create them, what you can do with them. But first let's cover the keywords for today's video. There are a lot of them, so let's get right into it. So the first one is data structures. So what are data structures actually? So data structures are basically ways for organizing, processing, retrieving, and storing data. So lists are a data structure. So because they can, well, think of a list normally. So a list organizes and stores data, and you can also retrieve and process data from the list. So that's why lists are data structures. So the next thing we're going to be covering is actually lists. So in programming, lists are a little different from real life lists. They're a data structure that is a mutable ordered sequence of elements. What does that mean? So like a normal list, everything in the list is in an order fashion. So number one, get the milk. Number two, get some eggs. Number three, I don't know, get some vegetables. So that's kind of how lists work as well. They are mutable, means you can change the values, and they're in an ordered sequence of elements. So you have number one, number two, number three, kind of like a grocery list. So that's how lists work, but they are made horizontally inside programming, not vertically like you write them on a sheet of paper. So that's one of the differences, and a few other things as well. Now what you can also do with lists is you can index lists. So you can index different data structures as well. You usually use indexing for lists, tuples, and strings. Not much else. We'll cover what tuples are in the next video. They're very similar to strings. Very similar to lists. So indexing. Now, indexing is a very important part of programming. It's a numerical representation of an item's position in a sequence. So like lists, the item's position in the sequence of the list. What do I mean by that? Let's say I have a list. It has 5 numbers in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Those are the 5 values that are inside the list. The values number 1 to number 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many values do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 values. Incorrect. In programming, we have 4 values. You may be confused, like, wait, what? No, this is 5 values. It's 4 values. Why is it 4 values? We start counting from the number 1. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me change the values because they're kind of getting confusing. Let's just say I have butter, eggs, peanuts. 3 is enough. So butter, eggs, and peanuts. So butter, the first thing, eggs, the second thing, peanuts, the third thing. But programming, but wait, what are the values again? Okay, I'll change them again. Animals. So cheetahs, lions, and bears. So cheetahs are the 0 animal on the list. Another animal, deer. Deer is the first animal on the list, and moose, I guess, is the second animal on the list. Now you may be confused. Wait, what? No, it's 1, 2, 3. Well, in programming, counting starts from 0, 1, 2. That's the point I'm trying to make over here. So you count like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In programming, you start from 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's basically what I'm saying. So an item's value, the first item in a list, for example, is the 0th index, not the first index, the 0th index. The second value in the list has an index value of 1. So 0, 1 is the second value, but it's starting from 1. Now the reason we have zeros and ones in this indexing is basically because of how they work, but we won't get into detail of that over here. That's basically how computers work. Now next is slicing. Now slicing is basically accessing a specific portion of a list for some operation while the original list remains unaffected. So you're accessing a specific portion of that list. So let's say I have a list with the 5 numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I only want to access the numbers 1, 2, and 3. I only want to access that portion. It won't change the original list, but I just want to do operations on that specific value. So I want to temporarily borrow them or I can even assign those values to a new variable. I can do that as well. So that's what slicing is, accessing a specific portion of the list. We can also do slicing with strings as well, but we'll cover that in another video soon. Now, square brackets. Square brackets are used to index elements in arrays and strings. So you basically have the square brackets next to your P key. So if you have a QWERTY keyboard, then on the right side of the top row, you will see two buttons before the backslash. That's what it says on my computer. The backslash is next to the two buttons on the left side, and next to those two buttons is the P key. So between the P key and between the backslash, there are two buttons. The first button is the left square bracket, and the next button is the right square bracket. So those are square brackets. In programming, we use them for indexing elements in arrays and strings. Now, methods. Methods are like a function, but they're written and called in a different way. So you basically write it in a different way. Like you remember when we said that we can actually define functions. So there are Python default functions. So some things are default in Python. So the functions are already made in Python for us. So we don't need to create them ourselves. But we can also create custom functions. In the same way, we can also create custom methods. So methods are created in a different way, and they're also used in a different way. Again, we have default methods in Python. Now, the reason we have these two separate things, even though they do literally the same thing, it's because of object-oriented programming, or OOP. Again, we'll cover that in another video soon. And it's basically a different way of writing programming, which makes it easier to actually do the programming, and it looks more professional and stuff. So that's all the keywords for this video. Now let's get right into the practical, and we're gonna see how we actually create lists and how we do all of these functions with them. Let's get right into it. Okay guys, so this is the second part of the video, and we're gonna be doing the practical of lists. So we're gonna be doing 6 things over here: creating a list, appending a value to a list, popping a value off a list, slicing values from a list, deleting a value from a list by specifying indexes, and deleting a value from a list by specifying values. So let's get right into it. So how do you create a list? First things first, kind of like variables, you specify the name of the list. So I'm going to create a list called nums, N-U-M-S, space equals space. So after the name, you specify a space, then an equals, and then a space. And now over here, we are going to write two square brackets, so the opening square bracket and the closing square bracket, and we're gonna put the values over here. So here are the 5 values. Now you can put strings in here, you can put integers in here, you can put floats in here, you can put a lot of stuff inside lists. Okay, it's very versatile, but in this case I'm just gonna put normal integers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So 5 numbers, 5 integers, and I separated these 5 values using commas, and a comma and a space. The space is not necessary, but again, your code looks clean because of it, so that's why I'm doing it. So if I run this over here, nothing's gonna really happen. It's just gonna accept it. I made the definition correctly, I created the list properly, so it's not giving me an error either. And now what I'm gonna do over here is I'm gonna use these lists for all of these things over here. But first of all, how does indexing work? So 1 has a value of 0, 2 has a value of 1, index of 1, 3 has an index of 2, 4 has an index of 3, and 5 has an index of 4. So the counting basically starts from 0. That's what I'm trying to say over here. So instead of saying that this is the first value, you're saying that this is the 0th value. There's no word for this 0th, so I'm just gonna call it that. So this is kind of like the 0th value, first value, second value, third value, and fourth value. So that's how indexing works. And now that we've created a list, I'm gonna take you through the process again. So name of the list, nums, space equals space, square brackets, and values separated by commas, and preferably a space. So value number 1, 1 comma space, 2 comma space, 3 comma space, 4 comma space, 5 comma. Okay, yeah, one thing, you don't put a comma space at the at the last value, you just write the value and leave it as it is, because that's how you close a list. That's how you write the last value of a list. So again, if I run it over here, no problems now. And now we're going to be appending a value to a list. What does appending mean? We're just going to add a value at the end to the list. So we are going to be using a method for this. So methods, again, just like functions, but they're specified, they're called, and they're also created in a different way. Why they're there? For OOP, or object oriented programming. Again, we're going to do it in another video sometime in the future. So we have the list nums. So to use the method, first of all, we specify the list name nums. Without any spaces, we write a dot, and we write the name. You can see that there are a lot of options over here. We write the name of the method that we're going to use. In this case, we're using the append method, and you can see that it turns kind of purplish pinkish. And then at the end, again without any spaces, you specify 2 brackets. Okay, and that's it. You created your method. Now what you can optionally do is that if the method, just like a function, some functions don't need any parameters or arguments inside them, but some of them do. Same thing with methods. Some don't, and some need them. So this append method does need values inside the bracket. So what values are we going to put? We're going to put the value that we want to append to the end of the list, or that we want to put to the end of the list. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's add a 6 to the end of the list. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, just to keep track of each thing we're doing, I'm going to print right after each thing that we're going to do. So now if I run it over here, you can see that it adds the number 6 to the end of the list, and that's basically what the append method does. It adds whatever value is given inside the brackets to the end of a list. I'm quite sure you can do it for strings as well. Again, we're going to do that in another video. And next we have popping a value of a list. Now popping is pretty much the opposite of append. You're taking off or removing the last value on the list. So in this case, the last value is 6. So let's say we put 6 by accident, and now we want to remove it. How are we going to do that? We're going to do it in the same way, using a method called pop. The method is actually called pop. So name of the list nums dot name of the method, it's going to be pop, and 2 brackets. But this time we're not going to put anything inside the brackets. We don't need to specify anything. So this is one of those methods where you don't really need to specify anything. It works just fine. You can't even put anything inside. If I try to put something inside and run it over here, then it's going to throw me an error over here. Now this is a very complex decipher of what this is actually doing, but ignoring everything, the mistake is basically that you're not supposed to put values inside this method. So now if I run it over here, you can see that the 6 has now been removed, and it's back to the original as it was before. So it removed the 6, which was the last value of the list. If it was something else, it would remove that, and now we are just back to the default as before. Now slicing values from a list. What's slicing? As we covered, we're taking a part of a list, not changing the actual list, and we're using it for something. In this case, we're going to assign it to a variable. So I'm going to make a camel case variable called list slice. Okay, space equals space as we define variables, and over here I'm going to do the slice of the list. So how do I do a slice? I specify the name of the list nums. Without any spaces, I put a square bracket, and inside that square bracket I do something like this. Now let me print the list slice variable so you can actually see what I did. And when I print this over here, as you can see, the only value that prints is 2. Let me make it a little bit more interesting. Why don't I do something like this? Now it prints 3 as well. What if I do this? It'll print all the numbers except 1 over here. So that's basically what slicing does. You can control what part of the list or string, you can also do slicing with strings, what part of the string or list that you're taking, you can assign it to variables, you can do mathematical operations on them, you can print them, a lot of things you can do with them. So in this case, we assign it to a variable and printed it. So how is this actually working? We defined the name and the square brackets, that's understandable, but what's this over here? So this is basically how you write slices. If I just write a semicolon like this and I run it, it's gonna display the whole list. So exactly the same as this. It displays the exact same thing over here. It doesn't display anything specific. Now on the left side of the colon, I specify which number it should start from, okay? So if I specify nothing, so if I specify 0, for example, and if I just remove the 0 and I just leave it blank, it's the same thing. So I'm not going to be using any zeros, so keep in mind that the blank spaces can basically be just replaced with a 0. So if I do something like this, it's going to print starting from the beginning. So it's going to print 1, it's going to print 2, and it's going to print 3. Note that slices do not work using indexes. So if I specify a 3 over here, you would think that it would print out it would print out, you know, the third thing inside your index. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So it would specify your list until 4. So it would specify this much. But no, lists slicing does not work using indexes. It works using normal numbers. So the first number, second number, third number. I want to print from the beginning until the third number, or I can just remove the 0 and it's gonna print 1, 2, and 3. I can also put a beginning value. If I put 2 over here, it's only gonna print the value of 3 over here. Reason being that it starts from 1 and 2, right? So I'm not gonna include this and I'm not gonna include this, but the limit is the third one. So there obviously there's nothing in between over here, so it's just gonna choose this value over here. So as you can see, it displays 3 on screen. So that's how slicing works in Python over here with lists and strings as well. Now we're going to be deleting a values by specifying indexes. So this was just an example of a slice. The normal list is unaltered. It hasn't changed because we created a new variable with that slice and it didn't change the actual list. So how do I know that? Let me print the list over here, and as you can see, it's the same as before and nothing has changed. So now we're going to be deleting a value from a list by specifying indexes. How do we delete a value? Keep in mind that we can delete any value in this list over here. Unlike pop, where it removes the last value of the list, so in this case 5 is the last value, so it would just remove 5. You can remove any value using indexes, and over here you can also delete any value using values themselves instead of indexes. So indexes, how do I do this? I'm going to specify the list name nums, alright? And since I want to delete it, first I'm going to write the delete keyword. So short form del. You don't have to write delete. If you write delete, then it won't work. You have to write del. Del space name of the list nums. Without any spaces, you specify the square bracket. Also keep in mind you do not need a equals over here. So I'm not making a typo. That's just how it is. And write the list name over here, and inside the square brackets you write the index that you want to delete. So let's say I want to delete 3 over here. So 0, 1, and 2. The value 3 is on the index 2, so I'm going to specify 2 over here. And now what happens is when I print num, the 3 should be gone, so it should be 1, 2, 4, 5. And when I print it over here onto screen, and as you can see, when I printed it onto screen, it removed the 3 from this list over here. So 1, 2, 4, and 5, it removed 3 because it was on the second index, and I specified number 2 over here. Now I want to do the same thing, but this time I want to use the value itself. I don't want to specify an index. I want to specify the value directly. So instead of writing the index 2, 3 was located on the index 2, so it automatically removed the number 3. But what if I wanted to specify the number 3 and it would find it in the list and then remove it? I can do that using the method remove. So how am I going to do that? First of all, as all methods work, name of the list nums dot, and I'm gonna write the method name remove, and inside the brackets we have to specify the value, just like we did in append. We have to specify the value we want to remove. So in this case, what we're going to do is we want to remove 2. Okay, so instead of specifying 1 like we would have done with delete, we're going to specify 2. We're going to specify the actual value of the list. We are not going to be specifying the index over here. We're going to be specifying the actual value, which is 2. We want to remove the value 2 from this list. We're going to specify the value 2 instead of writing its index, which is 1. And if I print this over here, then print nums, and as you can see, 2 has successfully been removed. So 1, 4, and 5, that's the list that's left over here. And that's basically all you can do with lists. There are a few other things you can do as well, but that's basically the basics of what you can do with lists, how you can change them, how you can do different things with them. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, then be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below as well. And I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.